G'day, Binanceans, and welcome to this week's Binance Beach. This is episode 46. I'm your host, Liam from Binance Australia. And as always, we're going to be talking crypto and Bitcoin this week. I'm flying solo, and I want to talk about the recent appearance that Michael Saylor had, the famous Bitcoin advocate and chairman of MicroStrategy. He appeared just recently on the Jordan Peterson podcast. And I find these kind of appearances really fascinating when we get these huge Bitcoin advocates and figures in the industry appearing on these more mainstream, large audience podcasts. And I think it's fascinating to hear what they say and how they pitch Bitcoin and crypto to a mainstream audience. But there was one particular statement that Saylor made in the interview that I thought was really profound. And I wanted to dive into that on today's episode and break down what that statement means and what my takeaways from that were, and also why this perspective that Saylor has is so interesting, and what it means for Bitcoin's purpose, vision, mission, and why I think it's such a revolutionary and important technology. So let's kick into it. What was the statement? I'll read it word for word. Bitcoin is an ideology manifested as a protocol, materialized as a network across which an asset runs. I'll say it one more time, just so you can wrap your head around it, because I had to go back and listen to this a couple of times. Bitcoin is an ideology manifested as a protocol, materialized as a network across which an asset runs. So let's dive into this. Let's look at this four-layered perspective on Bitcoin and why Bitcoin is so much more than just a digital asset, and why it's a foundational shift in how value crosses between people, how value is exchanged between people, and how money operates, and how I think this is going to change that forever. So the first part of that statement, Bitcoin is an ideology. To understand this, I think you have to go back to where Bitcoin started. And Bitcoin started just before or during the global financial crisis of 2008. If you haven't gone down the rabbit hole in this and you haven't read in detail the events that happened in 2008, because many of us in the crypto space are like me, we're younger people and we might have been alive at that point, but we definitely weren't cognizant of the global financial or macro situation, let alone even cognizant of money. In 2008, I was pretty young. I think I was just getting into high school. And so, money to me was not even money in a bank account. It was cash that I got for washing my dad's car or mowing my parents' lawn. And that was what money meant to me at the time. But for most of the world, and particularly the financial world, that was a pivotal event in US and global financial history. And of course, we know that through that event, you can read plenty of books on this. Lawrence Lepard's The Big Print is a great one. Or, of course, if you want something more entertaining, go and watch The Big Short. That's a brilliant movie about what happened. It actually contains some interesting, more technical information about what went on. But Satoshi Nakamoto was clearly watching these events and was clearly forming this ideology, or potentially he, she, or they already had this ideology that money was fundamentally unfair. And this is the basis of Bitcoin, and this is the basis of Bitcoin as an ideology. This idea of financial egalitarianism, or financial equality for everybody, that everybody should play by the same rules, and there should be no unfair treatment of one area, one group of people in the world or within a financial system over another. Nobody should get preference. Nobody should get handouts. Nobody should get access to capital or to additional money or free money before other people, and that was a root of unfairness. That was a root of many of the problems that Satoshi saw in the world. The idea that money should be censorship resistant, that it shouldn't be able to be confiscated or inflated away. The idea that centralization is not necessarily a good thing for a system or for a money, and that control by centralized parties such as governments or banks or centralized issuers was not ideal for the individuals who were participating in a monetary network. And this idea is rooted in, I think, libertarian values in a lot of cases, but also in egalitarian values. And Tom and I spoke recently about how Bitcoin can find a home all the way across the political spectrum, but definitely the ideas of censorship resistance, of self-sovereignty, and of decentralized trustless systems are what forms the core idea behind Bitcoin. This ideology manifests into Bitcoin's principles in a way which is very clear through the limited supply, the 21 million limit on Bitcoin, by the predictable monetary issuance, by the way that Bitcoin is issued, and that there's a halving every 4 years, and everybody will know how much Bitcoin will be on the open market at any given time. Not only now, but in the past, we know exactly how much Bitcoin was in issuance, was in circulation, and we know exactly how much Bitcoin will be in circulation at any given point in the future. And of course, the decentralized elements of Bitcoin and the way it incentivizes decentralization and relies on this as a tool to execute what Bitcoin is and how value is exchanged amongst the network. And again, this technical context forms the ideological foundation. These design choices or choices that Satoshi made were driven by this ideology. And so this is the first part of that statement. Bitcoin is an ideology. And I think as well, on a personal note, when you study Bitcoin and you go down the rabbit hole on Bitcoin, you learn to look at the world in a different way and to understand money and value in a different way. And so that's a really cool part of spending time in this industry, spending time around this digital asset class, is learning this ideology, learning what it values, learning its principles, and how they manifest into the real world. Why was this revolutionary? Why is Bitcoin as an ideology such a strong starting point? Well, it challenges that traditional monetary system, obviously, in the way that it promotes self-sovereignty. You can be your own bank, you can self-custody your own tokens, you have zero counterparty risk, and it's global, it's permissionless, it's a trustless system as both a store of value and of a medium of exchange. Well, pretty big, pretty fascinating, and an incredible place to start. Part two of that statement, Bitcoin is an ideology manifested as a protocol. So the Bitcoin network is a set of rules and algorithms that coordinate the network, coordinate the players on the network. And the core idea is that behind the Bitcoin protocol is that it's the technical background that encodes the ideology into enforceable rules that are enforced by code. The protocol defines how transactions happen, how new Bitcoins are created, and how consensus is reached across the network. So, of course, Bitcoin uses proof of work mining, and the proof of work mining mechanism wasn't brand new to Bitcoin. It was something that had existed in the past, but it was an absolutely key part of the design choice for Bitcoin as a protocol in enforcing monetary fairness around particularly the issuance of Bitcoin, and then rigidity or important, what's the word I'm looking for? It enforces strength in the network and in how transactions happen and in how value is exchanged across the network. Of course, it uses the decentralized timestamping mechanism, which enables a trustless verification and immutability of the Bitcoin ledger. And the Bitcoin protocol implements transaction scripts, cryptographic signatures, and the U2XO model to assure security and correctness across the chain. Why is this protocol again so revolutionary? It enables this decentralized, censorship-resistant ledger enforced by code with no intermediaries, with no counterparty risk. It enables self-custody in a way where the rules are transparent, open source, verifiable, and most importantly, equal for everyone, which is a crazy idea in the history of money. Never have we had something where the rules are the exact same for everybody at this level of scale. Part 3 of this statement, Bitcoin is an ideology manifested as a protocol and then materialized as a network. So this is how the idea behind Bitcoin and the rules that govern Bitcoin actually translate into the physical and tangible world. The network is the decentralized global infrastructure of nodes and miners. And Bitcoin is now the most powerful computing network in the world and has been for some time. Bitcoin isn't just code, and it can't just be code because it needs to exist in the real world to give it value, to give the network anti-fragility, to give the network strength, and to support the network running in multiple geographies, in multiple jurisdictions across the world, and then across time and space as well. So how does Bitcoin exist in the real world? It's a distributed network of participants globally running nodes or miners that validate and propagate transactions. Bitcoin nodes are the users of the network. They independently verify every block and transaction against the protocol rules. Everybody is individually checking that a transaction or a block has met the rules of the protocol and ensuring that these are upheld and ensuring the integrity of the network as it manifests and materializes into the real world. And then, of course, you have your Bitcoin miners. They contribute the computational work to secure the network by solving cryptographic puzzles, preventing double spending, and securing consensus. This relationship is fascinating. And if you'd like to deep dive on this more, you could read a book like what's it called? The Block Size Wars, which talks about the history of Bitcoin and particularly the history of the block size debate. And one of the most interesting parts of that book and that story is the battle for control over the network between the Bitcoin miners, the Bitcoin developers, and of course the Bitcoin node runners. And the key takeaway there was that no single party was able to control the network. The network moved forward, the network developed via consensus, not by the decision or control of any single party through that process. That's a fascinating read and well worth taking the time to do if you're interested in learning more about how the Bitcoin network upgrades and develops over time. So why is this revolutionary? Why is this network so strong? Well, it's global, it's decentralized, and it makes this Bitcoin monetary system robust against censorship. It makes it immune to shutdown and immune to control by any single entity. And it guarantees the availability and security of network 24/7 from anywhere in the world. And it guarantees the past of the Bitcoin network. It guarantees the immutability and the integrity of the ledger up until this point. And of course, it guarantees or it promises the immutability of the ledger and the integrity of the ledger into the future. And that is something that we've never had before as a human race. We've never had a ledger with this level of integrity and this level of decentralization or this level of computing power behind it. So this is a pretty fascinating and pretty powerful way that Bitcoin materializes into the real world. And finally, part 4, Bitcoin is an ideology manifested as Bitcoin is an ideology manifested as a protocol, materialized as a network across which an asset runs. So finally, we get to the Bitcoin asset, which is where most people start. People think about Bitcoin as a money or an investment or a store of value. But this is the last part. This is the final lens through which we can look at Bitcoin. And this is the final, piece of the puzzle as we look at Bitcoin as a whole. Bitcoin is, of course, or BTC. Some people like to use the ticker to delineate between the network, Bitcoin network, and the BTC asset, the BTC token. But BTC is the native digital asset with the unique monetary properties. BTC is the mechanism for value exchange for peers across the network. And while the protocol and the network enable the creation and the transfer of BTC, BTC itself is the scarce, fungible, and almost infinitely divisible digital asset. BTC inherits the security and the properties of the underlying protocol, the underlying network and infrastructure. And this is the way that we actually participate in the network, that we show our stake in the network, and the way that we, as users, as end users, receive the benefits and receive the value of participating in this system. Bitcoin scripting consensus rules track ownership transfer via the cryptographic keys, enabling secure pseudonymous peer-to-peer payments. The monetary policy, which has, of course, a fixed supply and predictable issuance, ensures the scarcity and resistance to inflation of the BTC asset. The asset can be stored, transferred, and verified without intermediaries. And of course, that is one of the key value propositions of the Bitcoin network, its lack of counterparty risk. And it can be done using just 12 words in your head. It requires no physical or tangible asset to exist that creates centralization risk and counterparty risk. It can be purely digital. And despite the fact that there's that enormous physical, tangible network that supports the Bitcoin ledger and the Bitcoin asset, you yourself can tap into that value proposition with zero physical or tangible thing at all in the world, which is pretty crazy. Of course, you can use exchanges to hold Bitcoin. You can use hardware wallets to hold Bitcoin. You might write your seed phrase down if you're self-custodying and leave it in a safe place, or you might consider multi-signature. There's so many ways to store Bitcoin, but ultimately you can just remember 12 words in your head and hold potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in economic value. And that really is just wild. And that's what makes the Bitcoin asset special amongst every other crypto and every other asset, from bonds to stocks. Its censorship resistant, self-custodial nature, and the way that it exists with such a huge presence in the physical world, with millions or tens of millions or maybe hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investment in Bitcoin mining and energy, in ensuring the security and the integrity of the network. And with all of that in the physical world, it can exist purely digitally in your head, which is amazing. So that was a statement. That was really fun. I love doing these deep dives into Bitcoin and crypto ideas. And I think Saylor too is such a strong advocate for this space. And I'm a bit of a Bitcoin and Saylor fanboy, so happy to admit to that. I hope you enjoyed that deep dive into that statement, that episode with Jordan Peterson. That's well worth a watch as well. It's fascinating to hear Saylor talk a lot more about his background, his study, his early years, about his sci-fi background as well, and how that fiction has impacted his ability to think and to talk about Bitcoin, and the way that he then goes ahead and explains Bitcoin to other people has been really influenced by a bunch of that stuff. And so that's really cool. He's a pretty unique individual and an amazing person to have on the Bitcoin team. So I'll read it for you one more time. Bitcoin is an ideology manifested as a protocol, materialized as a network across which an asset runs. And this enables Bitcoin to emerge as a monetary technology from its ideological roots, demanding sound money encoded into a robust protocol, sustained by a global decentralized network, which enables a very unique digital asset with unprecedented monetary characteristics. I hope you enjoyed that. As always, please like and subscribe. I got a couple of other call outs this week for you too. We've got just 2 days left on our Ride the Crypto Wave campaign with Jack Robinson. There's 35 USDT in rewards there for all of our users. So go and check that out. We've got token vouchers and trading fees if you deposit and trade. So definitely there's money on the table there. Go and get it. The other thing is we're starting to prep for tax season. So we are preparing a mega tax AMA with experts from Coinly, from Crypto Tax Calculator, from Saylor. And of course, if I get my way, we'll get one of my good mates, Harry Dell, back on the show as well to answer your hardest crypto tax questions for this year. So we're trying to line that up too. We've got a survey form open that you can leave your best tax questions. Best tax question will win $250 worth of Bitcoin. So if you want more of this sound digital money, then leave me a tax question and you'll be in it for a chance to win. I'll leave the link to both of those in the show notes. Otherwise, guys, have a fantastic rest of your week and I will talk to you soon. I'll see you back on the show. Thanks, guys. Bye. Please note that this discussion includes insights from non-affiliated third parties and key opinion leaders. Binance provides this platform for informational and educational purposes only and is not responsible for any content or insights provided. This information should not be considered as financial, tax, or investment advice from Binance.